Good afternoon. Welcome to the third installment of our three-part series featuring the voices of BIPOC Vermonters. My name is Rafael Cotoro. Across from me is my co-moderator and organizer, Sean Pratt. Today's event includes four community organizers all across the state. We hope that you've taken some time to read their bio on the Rutland Area NAACP website. And before we begin, I want to thank our sponsors, the ACLU of Vermont, Rutland Area NAACP, and Castleton University. We recognize that everyone on this stage identifies as a man. Therefore, this discussion is a male perspective. Several other people are doing work, racial equity work, all across the state. And we want to acknowledge especially the women who are doing this work. If you haven't, please watch the recording from last week that featured the voices of BIPOC women in Vermont. There will be time for questions from the audience in the second half of this discussion. So please type your questions in the Q&A session. Thank you, and welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So our first question for this audience is, for this group is, what are some of the key initiatives or advocacy work that you're doing that you want to share with the audience today?
I'll start off. Basically, my name is Capri Pelzer. I don't know where the camera is, my apologies. But the advocacy work that we do in the Bennington, Southern Vermont area is we take care of basketball with mentorship mixed together. So a lot of the children that we take care of are diverse groups. So we have white children, black children, Indian children, many children of different ethnicities, but they all come together with this sport. And what we do is just try to make it as fun as possible, as calm as possible, and make just a good environment for those kids to succeed. And that's pretty much what we want to do throughout Vermont. And we thank you for having us and see if we can have something also in this area as well.
Yeah, and Capri, how does that translate, that mentorship, and it sounds like a bridge to helping these kids succeed, right, in a life. The idea here, I would assume, is to give them an outlet and to help them succeed, to become productive members of the community. How does your work translate, and do you have some success examples that you can share? And to the audience, if people want to know more about the work you do, how would they find out?
Absolutely. First off, as far as with the work that we do, there's no specific one person I can say, but there is groups of children throughout that help and benefit from what we do. As far as with the basketball program, I've seen a lot of children go to college. I've seen a lot of people come down high schools that they thought they wouldn't be able to get in, come and see them in certain aspects, see them work out and things of that nature, them getting comfortable just wanting to be more than what they actually are. And just seeing me coming from the environment and the other brothers that are associated with me helps them because it bridges the gap. Because what happens at the end of the day is that the imagery of a young black male is not something that's projected to the kids in mass or media. And no disrespect to that, but that's basically what it is. So when they turn on the television, they see a person that looks like me, they're not going to overtly believe that we're going to benefit them in any kind of way. They're like, okay, he's probably just taking what he can, seeing what he can sneak off, and then they're just going to leave us like they always do. No, we're here in this community. We want to be here, and I want to see children succeed, not just black children, all children succeed. But I really want children that look like us to have a space where they can be comfortable, and they can actually have a space where they can progress more beyond what they think their norms are. They don't just have to be rappers. They don't just have to be entertainers. They can go into many different fields. There's children that want to be astronauts. There's children that want to do into different things, go into STEAM and things like that, mathematics and everything else. But there's no imagery of them seeing that as being cool. That's why they don't do it. it's cool to see a guy with the tattoos and we saying all these things and the pants sagging and I'm cursing and I'm being ignorant, the girls love me. That's nice, but it's not reality. We have to get to a basis of reality, and what we are, these men that's up here, and you as well, Raphael, is breaking the narrative. That's pretty much it, and that's what we continuously do. So it's not one specific child that I have. I think it's going to be more people that's going to benefit from what we're doing beyond just basketball.
Fascinating. Sean.
Capri, because we both live in the same area, let me ask you a question. Since we've been doing this, how do you feel like it's going so far? Do you feel like it's becoming better? Because I remember years ago, we didn't have any of those presence, that kind of presence in Bennington. But how do you think it's going right now? How do you think?
As far as what's going now, it's amazing. It's beautiful because I'm seeing that we're able to make the same food we used to make at home here. And not to put it in the terms of food, but sometimes you want mama's meal. You get a home cooked meal, feels good. And that's what it's feeling like we're having in Bennington right now. Like all children are able to come to our facility. We're being connected with so many other entities and everybody's coming together with one goal, to see their children progress in a nice way. That's it. And it's not just one dynamic anymore, because it used to just be one group of people, like successful people just putting their children in academies and things of that nature and benefiting them and us thrown to the side. No, now everybody, with what's going on with the different movements and the different this and that, it's changing. And that's what we need. And that's what I'm saying. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's interesting because you mentioned the meal, but the other one of the other examples you can use is haircut. You know, I remember when I first came to Vermont, I didn't know where to go to get my haircut. You know, when I had my hair long, you know, it used to be long. Where do I go to get my braids? You know, and I was able to link up with another family, you know, a black family, locally, who would give me a haircut and give me a ride back to campus, you know, and she was amazing, you know, and so I completely hear what you're saying. Gentlemen, do you also want to share some of the response to the question?
Well, Karim Chapman, I just want to say thank you, brothers, for this awesome platform and the opportunity to kind of share a little bit of me, my experience, and my perspective of being a black man here in Vermont. As my bio says, I am executive director for Vermont Psychiatric Survivors, also founder of Life Intervention Team, which was started in New York City, in Harlem, in the Bronx. And when I came here 4.5 years ago as a resident, I thought that, you know what, this place needs different energy. This place needs to see a different perspective of what a black man can do. And like Capri said, we're not all just rappers and basketball players and want to kind of be in that street life. Although that's where I come from. And being one of the first black individuals to even be, you know, supported by Rutland Mental Health in the clinical world. I'm not a clinician, but I was supported and given a lot of good feedback on the work and my experience as a person who have gone through a lot in my life. So I always look for the opportunity to show something different. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I shouldn't even be here right now on this stage. And not to get spiritual, but God always allows us to go through what we got to go through. He allows it because sometimes our stories will be the story that will help the next young black and brown person. So one of the things that I'm doing in Rutland County is, again, I've brought my 501c3 into Rutland County, and we've been given a grant from the state.
And what's the name again of the
Life Intervention Team? Okay. And again, when I was in New York City, we worked with the gangs and the kids who were kind of lost in the streets, and that's how it was derived. But we don't have too much of a gang issue here in Vermont. I mean, we know it's here, but it's not as big as it is in New York City. So I had to kind of change things around to kind of fit and tailor it around what's happening here in Vermont. Whether you're black or white, kids are still lost. You know, it may not be gun violence or, you know, kids having certain pressures like New York City, but it's here. So Life Intervention Team is able to deal with the families, deal with the systems, and deal with the kids who just don't feel they have a future. You know, our future lawyers and doctors, black and brown in the state, they have to know that they're there. And seeing us and come from where we come from, it's touchable. They can touch it. It's in reach for them. So I just thank God for the opportunity to be in the state. And I have experienced racism here. I've experienced love from white individuals in the community. So again, just I'm grateful to be a part of this group and to be able to share my story and my experience.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Please.
So you've been here for years. How do you feel like it's from when you first came to Vermont to this point right now, to the point you're at now? How do you feel like it's going now from when you first came to Vermont?
Progress. I think as black men in certain circles, we have to overperform, and it's all right. And I believe I've been given the opportunity to do that. You know, like yourself, I've been appointed by the governor to be a part of the criminal justice system council, where we are taking a look at how police are treating our people, how they're hired, you know, policy and procedures. So I'm a part of that, you know, and I've been in cuffs before. I know how it feels to feel like tomorrow might not come to me.
So have I.
So exactly. So, you know, while Vermont has a long way to go, I think there are people who are trying, and I recognize that, and it's a good thing, you know. But I'm not going to be naive and say that there are people who are against people like me and my background. But it's all right because we got a story to tell. We have an impact to make.
You said that people were trying. Now, we making progress on that front. I think it goes back to what Sean was asking too, specifically to the committee that you're on. Do you see any kind of a progress?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, before I came or was appointed by the governor to be on the council, I don't think there was a lot of black folks on that council. So that's progress. You know, our voices are always heard, and when we don't agree with something, we speak up about it and we talk about it. So I think we've been embraced. You know, we've been embraced, and there's still a long way to go. You know, because how systems are already put in place, I don't agree with them. So I'm in a space to be able to say I don't agree with that. This is how it should change. So yeah, it's been some progress in that area.
So I'm going to repeat the question because it's been a while since I asked it. So the question was, what are key initiatives or advocacy work that you're doing that you want to share with the audience? So I think we have Mark and Malcolm.
Sure. Malcolm Greene. I'm relatively new to Vermont. I have to say, I take a back seat to a lot of these other gentlemen up here who are actually doing more advocacy work. I'm more into the farm aspect. I like agriculture. I like gardening. And my ultimate intent is to set up a scenario, a situation where our people are more dependent on ourselves rather than the bigger system. So food security is a very, very important thing with that. Just meeting these brothers the other day on a short call we had, you know, I know Mark already for a few years now, and he's just on the forefront with a lot of the legal stuff that's going on here. I gather from Karim that he's a doer. He's not interested in a lot of talk. The love I feel from Capri right here is just, you know, it speaks for itself. And Sean is the master organizer. So I'm honored actually to be on this stage with these folks right now. And just in the way of what I think Vermont has and what Vermont may need is, and what it's been missing is this element, is the element of something other than the 95% or 94% of the folks that's here. I've traveled a little bit in my life, and what I've noticed is that any place that has the majority in the 90s percentages, if you will, of any type of people needs to have other folks there just so that the rest of the cultures of the world can also flourish there, to where people, you know, can be a little more, I don't know the best word for it, but, you know, you just cross bridges and be able to see other cultures, if you will. So yeah, that's what I have to say at the moment. You know, I'm sure more thoughts will come, but
I just want to say this,
sure.
Malcolm, and also Mark, and even Capri. I mean, all the men on the stage for me. Sometimes, you know, I need to talk to someone that looks like me or can feel the same way that I can, and I know that these men afford that, and Kareem also, also you two. I mean, all the men up here. So I think I know a lot of even though a lot of people feel like there's not advocacy work that they do, just by sitting down and talking and having a conversation. And there's times there's a lot of times, Mark, I can sit on the phone and I can listen to you, because I think for me, I need to hear a lot of the stuff that needs to be told. Um, and I look at you guys, as the big homies, guys that I can come to and talk to. So I think for me, that's the advocacy work that you guys do, and also, you know, navigate your own lives, you know, privately. So just wanted to say that and say thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate you as well, Sean. I think that we're on a few calls together, and a lot of times, you know, I have to make sure my button is on mute because I'm ready to scream at the screen. And someone normally like yourself or myself will say the thing that needs to be said. And I feel like though it's good to be polite, to be courteous to folks, I think sometimes we can get lost in that, and sometimes the hard truth needs to come out there. And less that, the conversation's not going to go in the direction that it would need to go in order to be helpful for the people involved in it. So a lot of times I think that's the voice that's missing. And I think the more we have people on these committees, on these RDAP or whatever the criminal justice thing, it's, you know, those are the places we need to be as opposed to being in the cuffs, you know what I'm saying? And that's it's the bigger picture.
I want to say something real quick, and then we're going to get to Master Mark here in a second. But I just got to say, I second that Sean has been, it's really been a vision here for a lot of this event that we're doing today. This is the third of a series that we've been doing now, and in the future we'll have more of these. But I got to say that I know Sean and I know Malcolm, I know Mark, and I just met Karim and Capri, and these are wonderful men. And I gotta say that Sean and Malcolm are like they are. I think a duo, Shaq and Kobe. Any duo that when it comes to, you know, just issues of social justice and racial justice and advocacy work, they're not afraid to speak, and I really appreciate that voice. Oftentimes they inspire me as well. And then we've got Master Mark, as I call him. He is doing a lot of work, very modest about the things that he does. But he does do a lot. And seriously, he's more, what would you be like, the Phil Jackson of the group?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. In fact, first, I just want to say, above all, I want to just give honor to God for being here, who's the head of my life and my Lord and Savior, and acknowledge the brothers who put this together, and also the organization, the organizations that stand behind this work. I think the last time we were together was Rutland NAACP maybe a couple of years ago, and it was probably, I think Tabitha put it together, it was probably maybe about 8 or 9 brothers that were sitting around the stage, and this, it always feels good. Secondly, I would say that, I really, I have a, honest desire to just deflate, the hype that seems to always, either follow me or go before me on a very serious level. I would appreciate it if I wasn't Master Mark. I would appreciate it if I wasn't referred to as, that guy, because I'm not that guy. And I came here to be with my brothers, and it really makes me feel uncomfortable when I'm lifted up like that. So I really would just like to just be who I am and just be on the same level as my brothers and sisters across the state, because I really am. I want to be productive in the work that I do, and I don't want to be elevated because that's not what this work is for. The work that we do is not for profit. It's not for fame. It's for people. So I'm not a basketball player. I never was. I was a wrestler. I'm, again, as you said, I'm Mark Hughes. I'm the executive director of the Racial Justice Alliance, and the work that we're doing is lifting up Black folks, and that has to do with our ability to thrive, our prosperity, our safety, our security, and we do it in a lot of different ways. And I think, just to be kind of clever in terms of how to respond to this, because I think a lot of folks know much of the work that we do, some of the work that we do across the state, and I think really we got a few swim lanes, and when you think of platforms and initiatives, I think that's what is most pronounced when we talk about the ACT policy framework, and which includes a joint resolution declaring racism as a public health emergency, which just came out of the legislature, as well as the constitutional amendment, which we continue to follow. And there must be public hearings on that, so I want to flag that because there are two exception clauses, just like the 13th Amendment. There's a couple of exception clauses in our Constitution, which is the oldest Constitution known in the United States. And what we're doing is we're making sure that that language says that under all circumstances that slavery and indentured servitude are prohibited by Constitution. So that public hearing will happen probably at the beginning of the session in January or February. The House Government Operations will do that. And then that will go on the ballot because this will be the second biennium, the close of the second biennium. So I just wanted to flag that as being like probably one of the most prominent platform and initiative issues. However, there's a number of other things that we're doing, and I wanted to point out. I know it's Burlington centric, but we do have a campaign that's called Right Way. For those who are not watching, and the reason why it's relevant is because truly the area between Maple and King Street in Burlington, in that downtown area, is really, when you look at census tracts, the blackest neighborhood in Vermont. And just as we have always done as a nation, across the nation, we have a plan to run a highway right through the middle of it. So they call that the Champlain Parkway, and that's been happening for quite some time. So we're advocating for what we call the right way. We don't want to do it the old right way. We want to do it the new right way. So that is something that's kind of high on our radar and important to talk about. We are really in a lot of our communities too. We were in Battery Park last night. Sometimes we'll just bring some music out in the park. We intended on doing a film viewing last night, but we had some technical difficulties. But we do a number of those things. But as far as advocacy, a lot of community outreach and organizing around teaching our people, as well as the broader community, the root causes, the impacts, as well as solutions surrounding systemic racism. We got to have that conversation. What is our shared definition of systemic racism? What is our true national history? We got to have these conversations. So a lot of outreach and education, but then there's also a lot of community engagement and assistance that we're looking to do. We've given away grants to small Black-owned businesses already. We'll continue to do that kind of work as well. I'm going to pause there because I don't want to take up too much space, but I will just go back to just briefly to what has happened within this legislative session. Yes, we did put forward an incredibly robust agenda. We can talk more about that later, maybe in the back hour. It was dismal, the outcome. what we experienced in terms of how it, the outcome of the session. Even the health equity bill that was able to come across the finish line was unfortunately it didn't really come close to meeting what our original expectations were. But it's done and it's progress, and we never get what we asked for.
I do have a follow-up question on that. Okay, can I?
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so but let me say, the comment I made was out of respect for Mark, and that just shows their humility. He's a very humble person, and that's who he's always been. He does a lot of big work, big work, and he never speaks about those things in a way that is self-fulfilling. So I appreciate you and your humility for being humble here today, and we're fortunate to have you. I do. You mentioned the committee, the bills that are in committee, out of committee, and the dismal response to some of these agenda that's been passed. What advice or what can you tell people who are watching today and who will be watching the future recording of this event? What can you tell them? How can they support? How can we create a more robust activity behind some of these bills?
That's a great question. I think what's going on now is we have a social equity caucus, which was initiated by Kevin Coach Christie on the 24th of August of 19. And now we have Keisha Ram who signed on to that. And I see that there's a lot of organizations and individuals that are joined into that. I think honestly, our attention we were kind of distracted by that a little bit this year, and I think we relied quite heavily on the caucus in anticipation that what they would be doing is just supporting our legislative agenda, because politically, it is that caucus that essentially is supposed to be speaking into the ear of the larger legislative body. That being said, and it seems like a digression, but I think this kind of goes together, is we will, as a result of the lessons that we've learned from our experiences in that apparatus, we'll do a better job at doing more public-focused work. That is to say, to reach out directly to our constituency much more aggressively. So we have a statewide mailing list of probably 3,500 people or so, and they all know, those who are watching, who they are, and those who don't should know that they can go to vtracialjusticealliance.org. That's vtracialjusticealliance.org, or they could also send an email over to info@vtracialjusticealliance.org if they're interested in being on that mailing list. And what we will do is we will get a little bit more momentum behind these policies. And I don't see anything wrong with policies that clear obstacles for economic opportunity for Black and brown folks. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't know why we weren't able to advance policies like that, and the list goes on. So what we'll do is we'll bring the people directly at them, and I'm looking forward to engaging, our folks will be engaging our folks directly, and we will have some 8th graders with green jackets running up and down the halls with pink envelopes chasing legislators this session.
So folks, you have it. Join in and join the fight. No, Sean wanted to ask a follow-up question.
I don't have a question. I just want to say, just hearing you, just hearing what you were saying, that's the reason why I'm able to really come out and speak the way I'm able to speak. And we kind of give each other that kind of strength. And like I said, being able to bring all of us together, because like you said, it's funny, you said this, I didn't even realize it. You said 2 years ago, right? And now let me say something. Let me explain something. We got to do it ourselves, right? We got to organize ourselves in terms of when we're Black men, right? We have to be able. We can't leave that up to no one else to do. So I think at some point, right? Not that we leave it up to other people. Like we want to be with other people, and You know, we know that there are people behind us, but I think we have to do some of these things ourselves also, and really dig deep and really try to understand each other, and not, we don't want to put what we have to do as men on other people, you know. So, but like I said, what you do is, it helps us. And by you meeting the other guys, the other, you know, we can all get to know each other more. So I appreciate everything you're doing, man.
Thanks, Sean. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I know Karim and Capri, hopefully we'll get a chance to. They don't want us to come together.
That's right.
Somebody wants us to. I mean, there are people out there that are looking at us and they're thinking, how do we burn this down? You know, how do we burn this Wall Street down? How do we create disruption in this? You know, all these guys, they're troublemakers, or they're this is critical race theory, or blah 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 blah. I don't mind saying that. As it stands right now, we got folks coming at the alliance saying that because they're white and we're not doing stuff for them, that we're discriminating against them. That's in the HRC. Wait for it. It's coming, but that's okay. You know what I say? Bring it. Okay. You really want to talk about how taxpayer dollars are being unfairly distributed amongst people across this nation, across this state? You really want to have that conversation with us? Bring it.
And that's going to be one of the questions for later as well. So we're going to get into the question of critical race theory. Sean?
Next, we're going to have the Capri. This for you, Capri.
John Lewis said, good trouble.
Good trouble.
Good trouble. Good trouble.
Right.
So let's start off with Capri. Capri, how do you think race relations are in Vermont today? How do you see race relations in Vermont today?
As far as with race relations today, I would have to not just put a pocket and just say Vermont. I say it's overtly throughout this country. The relations, it's an awkward conversation. It's like a cousin from another place, but you guys don't really have any interactions with each other. But he has his mindset about you and you have your mindset about him. But you cordially go through the line of life without interacting. I don't have an issue with white people, but I have an issue with you taking away from me progressing with my family. I have an issue with you coming to harm me when all I'm trying to do is live. The issue is that we want the same things they want. The problem is they don't give it to us. I'm not going to beg at your table. I'm a man. I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'm going to work for it. And my sons will do the same. But for you to come at us as a people and say we are not the people that deserve respect or the people that deserve any type of function to look at as a human, it's disgusting. But then when we yell and say you're harming me, I'm the person who's being looked down upon for fighting the guy that's hanging me. So you're lynching me, but me fighting is a problem. That's what's happening. I'm not saying it's a physical lynch. It's more of a mental, and it's as well as it's more paperwork, commercial, politic kind of interaction. Because overtly, the other people on different races and different ethnicities, they know what's occurring. It's sad that it took us nearly 400 years to fight and say that we want somebody to treat us right. But no disrespect, our Asian brothers and sisters, it took them 2 years to get legislation to state that it's a hate crime to speak to them like that. It's a hate crime to hurt them. We're not going to be on the even playing field if you're not going to look at the person that you're always harming. And if you need somebody, like that's the saying, if you need someone to be on their knees to feel like you're tall, who are you? If for us to be down, you have to be on top of us without looking at us as men or women or anything of that nature. What does that make you? I don't look down on nobody. I want the same thing that man have across the street. But it's not happening, Sean.
Mm.
It's beautiful that it's progressing, and I hope my sons are able to get to a level where they are respected as men as well. But what I'm seeing is happening in society, that it's going to be the same story, just a different character.
Capri, one of the interesting things about what you said when you talk about the proverbial lynching, and when we talk about systemic racism and what that means is, people don't really understand that what we're talking about, sometimes it's not necessary, it doesn't have to be the cross burning on someone's lawn and people wearing sheets. The physical things, the things you see, but it's in a system. It's a structure issue when it comes to policing, police brutality, when it comes to fairness in the workplace, all of the things that are happening in the legislation and so forth. So when it comes to the disproportionate incarceration of Black men, especially, those issues are systemic issues that are not always visible in the way that we see or saw the Ku Klux Klan and the granddaddy racism. That's not what we're fighting today. It's baked in the system now, right?
Yeah, I was thinking these two fish were swimming, young baby fish swimming in the water, and they passed a grown fish, and the grown fish said to him, "The water's nice today, huh?" And the little one said, "Yeah," and they kept swimming, and he looked at the other little one and says, "What's water?" I think of that analogy frequently with the way you say it's baked into this system. You hear people now say, "Oh, slavery happened years ago, get over that," X, Y, and Z, and it's like, it is so ingrained in this country, in all of its systems in some way or the other, that people, since they told Martin King and folks even before him, patience, we can't do these changes so quickly. People aren't going to be ready for these changes so quickly. And so now I feel like if you wait so long, you get to today's date and people look back like, "Oh, that was years ago, well, why even, so it's like a catch-22. Like you want to wait on the one hand, but then, as we wait and we get down the line, it's like, "Oh, that was years ago. You still talking about that? Y'all haven't been able to tighten your bootstraps," kind of thing. And that doesn't take into account, like what all these guys are saying up here, that this is baked into the system. This is something where, and you hear this term reverse racism and we could sit up here all day and say, "I can't stand white folks. I can't, white people, this, that, and the other, X, Y, and Z." And at the end of the day, I've heard it said, they still gonna get the loan. They still, the system is what we're looking at. It's not about the individual thing with the Klan and that sort of thing, but if you can't get recourse and redress for anything, on a system level, then they've done their job previously. And the reality is, I just want to say this too, and you're gonna have to stop me sometimes because I tangentialize, if that's even a word. I'll pass it. I'll come back because I don't want to.
I think it's well said.
Yeah, no,
Correct.
that's awesome, man. That's good. I just want to say to Black people, man, brown people, the healing has to start somewhere. And when I say healing, we can't even get past what's in front of us in our own communities, amongst each other, as Black folks and brown folks, if we can't get past healing. Progress will be stunted if we can't even heal ourselves. The trauma, the anxiety, the depression in our communities is so deep, generational, that's why it's so easy for somebody to say, "Why y'all still mad for?" That happened like 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago. I wasn't a part of that. But they don't see how generations of it carries on. And it manifests itself in different ways. Me seeing my father killed.
I'm sorry.
Me seeing my best friend shot in front of me. One of my best friends. Me not understanding why we're not given a chance. And I would hear somebody else say, "That's all on you. You do it. Like, just do it. Like, I don't understand why you stay in your hood, why you don't leave and go away and do different things." They don't understand what's happening up here. And a lot of that comes from healing. We haven't forgiven ourselves. So if I can't forgive myself, how am I going to make progress? How am I going to teach another generation to remember what our ancestors did for us and the sacrifices that happened? So I just, when you was talking, Malcolm, I just, you know, God put healing around me, and if we don't start with that kind of healing, we can't go into understanding. Because the other race won't even understand us if we don't start with healing and understanding. That's where it starts for everything with me. In the story I told the other day about the woman, the white woman calling me a nigger in the store, and they were all waiting for me to respond negatively and react like what they think a black man, how a black man should react. I showed her love in that moment. And other people saw that and wasn't ready for it. They weren't ready for that reaction from me. But I was able to do that because I already began the healing process already. I already began to forgive myself what I did in my own community.
Now, and I hear you say the story. So for the audience to understand what you're talking about this woman, what exactly happened without giving too much information?
Right. Put real briefly, I was on lunch and went into a store to buy some food for lunch, and there was a white woman behind me, and I was about to pay for my food, and she just said, you know, hurry up, nigga, go back where you came from, that kind of thing. And at first I was a little shocked and like paused, like, whoa, okay. And I turned around and I just seen eyes on me like, oh, movie time, what's you gonna see this black guy about to do? It's about to go down, right?
That's exactly what
And like I told the brothers, you guys the other day, was that, you know, I think God has made me in that way to be patient and wait for those experiences, because what I did was the opposite of what she thought I was gonna do. And what I said was, ma'am, I'm pretty much, I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through. You know, you want to go in front of me and pay for your food, and I'll be patient and wait for you. The other people in the store started coming to my defense, like, you know, kind of attacking her. I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. What I want her to see is what I want her to walk away from. That a black man was able to be different, show compassion. Because let me tell you, this racial thing is deep. And even some white folks don't understand the racial part they have in them.
Right.
And, you know, so I want to give her compassion and empathy, understand that whatever she's going through, whatever she grew up in, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing something different. I'm not going to get spiritual right now, but I understand that there's a spirit behind that. And God allowed me to be patient and be humble in that moment. And she actually just was quiet. And she went in front, paid for her food, and she left out. And then people were like, wow, aren't you mad? I said, no, we got to pray for her. We got to pray for that spirit that is hates for no reason. Wow. She don't know me.
And just to build on that real quick, I think, unfortunately, it's the concept of the other with a lot of folks. And again, unfortunately, 95% of a place, you don't know us. The images and the ideas you have of us is what you've seen on TV and in Hollywood. And that's a ridiculous depiction, if you will, you know what I mean? And it lacks so much of what people are. So to hear this story reminds me of so many things I've said and done in my lifetime, because as you can clearly see, a lot of times people don't know who I am. So they feel the liberty to say things right in front of me that they wouldn't say if any of the other brothers on stage were here. So I'm craftful, I guess, sometimes in how I deal with that. But I just wanted to build on that's why I think this is so important, is that we're giving you the narrative. We're showing you who we are as people, as opposed to, you name the movie, you know, whatever that people see and get the ideas from. So,
Boys in the Hood.
yeah.
I think that the question, I'm the oldest one up here, so you got to give me a break on remembering stuff. But I think it was more along the lines of, you know, what's the progress of racism? What's the progress of race relations? I think it was. How am I doing? in
Yeah,
Vermont.
you did good.
I'm sorry,
Well,
that's a question.
Yeah,
how do you
and
see race relations in Vermont?
yeah, and that's an interesting question because it could, you know, take us off the beaten path. It could take us in the wrong direction. So I challenge the premise of the question, you know, respectfully. I challenge the premise because, you know, just going back to the legislative session and the stories that I was telling there and thinking about how all of this stuff comes together. Here's a quick story. I'm sitting in front of President Pro Tem Ash, and I'm sitting in front of Chairman Sears, and they say, why do we need to create an Office of Racial Equity? They said, we already have the HRC. I said, that's overt racism. And then they looked at me and said, oh, so boom, here we are. So there is a huge difference. When you start thinking about the ideologies and you start thinking about the stories that people make up about us, it's to reinforce
Absolutely.
systemic racism. It's to sustain it. It's to maintain it, to make sure that it goes into perpetuity. It was already established. Okay, it was out of greed. It was out of
Violence.
finances.
Violence, I was going to say.
Oh, you said violence, yeah,
Violence,
but how it was constructed was greed and economics. And we can talk about that
Capitalism,
later. But the point I'm making is that to address systemic racism, again, common shared definition, and I think this is a multifaceted approach that, you know, I think we ought to be looking at it. This kind of how I'm looking at it is first, it is our cultural empowerment. It is who we are. What is our history? What is our legacy? You know, who are we? What is our contribution? Talk about our resilience. Then you can talk about our power because we know who we are. Okay, that's the first thing they try to take from you. It doesn't make any difference, you know. And at the end of the day, I think that really goes back to that disconnect. So what should we be doing? Constantly doing those things, seeking those things, endeavoring those things that would seek to rebuild, reestablish, or reintroduce us and our legacy and our posterity to our cultural empowerment. Number two, you know, our community, as we've been talking about, is you know, how are we engaging our community, and that is educating them about this systemic racism. What is the definition? Where did it come from? That includes our true history as a nation. Okay. The third thing is helping our community. That's the engagement and assistance. How do we empower folks? How do I teach you how to create a resume? How to adult basic education, STEM development, whether it has to do with helping you figure out how to make a company or point you to technical assistance and so forth. And then the other thing, obviously, is policy, but looking into these organizational processes that really speak to, that really lift up systemic racism, like hiring and appointment processes. Right. You know, like you know, this so-called public engagement processes that all these organizations do to acquire federal funding that they halfway do. Right. The list goes on, but so I think it's a multifaceted approach in the work that we all must do. We all can't do it all, but it's all got to be done. And the question is how do we dismantle systemic racism more than it is the question of how is race relations? I don't really care if anybody likes me because I'm black or not, or even if they calls me a name, just get out of the way so our people can have our stuff.
So well said.
I figured like once I asked a question that, you know, you was gonna answer it. You know, so this is what we need. We need to hear these things. So thank you, man. I appreciate it.
I was going to say that we are at the end of the first half of this segment. We will be going to break in about 30 seconds or so. I just want to give Sean the opportunity to wrap this segment up because I know you've also talked about the coming together, the coalescence of the black and brown community to make sure that we're working together.
Like I said, I think we have to really just have more as black men, just have more of a connection with each other throughout the state. I've talked to Mark a little bit. I can't even remember how we even got together, but I know why, because of the work that we do. And, like I said, I heard a lot of the stuff that you said, you talk about, and it makes a whole lot of sense. And, but, with that being said, I think understanding that we all need you, you need us, we all got to do the work. It can't be just one person doing the work. So this coming together is so important, so that we can start to establish that kind of relationship and rapport. Because just imagine how many other men throughout the state, Newport. I had a gentleman call me up in, I think he was in Newport, and he said he was getting harassed. And when I hear the voices shake, and they say that there's no one up there to talk to, sometimes I feel like I want to get in my car and go up there. It's a lonely feeling when you don't have nobody that looks like you to talk to, that can understand what you're going through. So, like I said, this is so important, because what I want to do is grow with this even more, and connect with more people throughout the state. Even in New Hampshire. We're in the Northeast. Period. So, like I said, everybody here brings something, and it's gonna make us more stronger as we move forward. So that's it.
So that's the end of our first segment. We will take about 10-minute break, and we will be back. Thank you. Welcome back. So the second segment of this installment, the second segment of this event discussion will focus on questions and time for questions from our viewers to ask questions as well. So I just want to reiterate that everyone on this stage identify as men, and we are conscious of that and acknowledge that there are lots of women and other people who don't identify as men who are doing great work in the state, who are BIPOC, identified BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, all across the state who are doing good work. So the perspective of everyone here today is from a male perspective. We acknowledge that and recognize and appreciate the work that others are doing, the non-men all across the state are doing. And I want to say again, if you haven't, please watch the segment from last weekend that featured the voices of women, BIPOC women in Vermont. With that said, we will jump into the questions, the next questions. But Sean, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, this is a question. This is a question for Mark. Land ownership. How can we make land ownership more attainable for BIPOC living in Vermont or who want to move to the state?
Why is this my question?
Well, I think.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
I'll answer it, but I'm just wondering why.
I'm taking some
Everyone-
water.
It just said here specific.
Quick little background.
Okay.
Yeah,
There was
yes,
a Homestead Act in this country years
Uh-huh.
ago. And if you got to a plot of land and you occupied it for a year, and correct my details on this, I don't know the specifics, but you then applied to the government, it was then yours. Forget that it was Native people's land. We're not even gonna get into that subject, but this is what the government was doing in the way of setting up legacy for white folks from years back to as the reasons they got 150, 200,
Right.
300 acres
Exactly.
in various states, right? That's the backdrop. We weren't even considered citizens, much less men, much less humans, 3/5, if you will, right? So we didn't have that into the system. So with respect to that question, I absolutely agree with that. Why don't we have a Black and Brown and BIPOC, whatever you want to call it, Homestead Act? Why not?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was tickled that you asked me that question because I know that I know that there's some policy that's in play, and we've been wrestling with it, and I think others have been wrestling with it. There's two things happening. To Malcolm's point, they gave away 270 million acres to white folks in expansion of the Homestead Act in I think it was 1850, it's somewhere between 1836 and 1850 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But there were a number of other things because how we got to where we are, and I think something that we've been missing is that there has been a consistent pattern throughout all history of the United States of laws that have created obstacles or provided economic opportunities to white folks that didn't exist, and so on and so forth. But fast forward to today, I think it's important that we do that. I honor the work of Stefan Gillum and who's the sister that's with him? That's doing that work with the Every Town and also
I forget her name.
Anyway, I think the bill is H273 if I'm not mistaken. So I honor that work. One of the things that we were going to do, the Alliance, we're going to do something similar to that. However, when we heard that they were doing it, I just asked if through Rep. Chena if we could just review the policy. We were able to do so and contribute to it to the extent that we were able. We fully support 273. We're disappointed that the bill that was created by the white women took precedence over it, and it was considered instead. It didn't get down the road either. I think it was H223 or something like that. But yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. At the heart of everything that we need to be doing right now is we need to be looking at how do we clear obstacles for economic opportunity for Black folks. Period. And by the way, I decided not to be BIPOC because I used to be Negro. I used to be African American. And I'm not getting stuck in that pot. But what we're gonna do is we are gonna hold this up. We're gonna support that. And if y'all want to use that language, we'll use it in our bills. But I don't identify as that, just to be clear, because I'm not getting in that pot with y'all. Okay, but as far as the whole idea of that is not just that. You got to look at how are folks holding the land. You got these things called land trusts. Right. You got these conservatories. Right. Anything that's historical preservation, to me, in my mind, is suspect anyway. Okay, because of where we come from. So there's a lot of ways in which that white people have been able to hold land and transfer land. Title 10. Okay, I think we need to be taking a closer look at that. We have already unpacked some of it. We'll do some more, and then that ties right into economic development, and that is, with these foundations around the state and ACCD, and how this money is getting into these communities or not getting into these communities through Capstone, CVOEO, and other organizations. We need our own. We need our own. We need our own stuff. And I'll keep saying that because what we know is the systems that exist are broken. They were not designed for us. I'm sorry. They're working perfectly. They're not designed for us. And what we need to do is since we know that there are disparities that are being delivered to us consistently, universally, and all at the same time, simultaneously, we know that there are disparities that are being dealt to us all at the same time that are adverse. Then, we've waited long enough to see how these systems can be fixed. I think what we should be trying to do is build systems while we try to transform these systems. So yeah, I think definitely this home and land ownership is a thing, and we should be talking about it. The question is will the legislature have a political will? Do they have the intestinal fortitude? Do they have a compassion and care? Do they understand what systemic racism is enough to do it? And I'm an optimist, and I say no. They don't understand it enough. They don't share a common definition of it. Look, guys, we just came out of a pandemic. We're at the end of a global pandemic in the middle of a national racial referendum, and we're sitting on the backside of a legislative session, and we still didn't get nothing done. And not only was the CARES Act, the CARES Act money misdirected, redirected, undirected to us, but we're taking a look at ARPA right now, and it ain't happening. So yeah, I'm not optimistic about it, but we're going to keep trying, and we're going to keep saying that this is what we deserve.
And the fundamental idea or thought behind this question too is this question of cultural empowerment. I heard you, Mark, talk about cultural empowerment before, but also economic opportunities and economic empowerment. And when we look at the GI, it would be one example that I can think of how those were distributed. That's a whole different conversation.
That's right.
GI Bill before, and it was something else before that.
The New Deal.
And yeah, New Deal. So there's a
Social
list of
Security.
things you can go on,
That's right.
right? You can go down the line and talk about. It all feeds back to what we talk about when we talk about systemic racism. And I know I saw your hand. You wanted to chime me a little bit, Capri.
Just as far as that, what you guys are saying, like I understand the basis of it, but I also look at it from the outside looking in. I'm nearly 40 years old and we're still having the same conversation that my ancestors are still fighting to this day. But the answers were what they did when they first came out of slavery. They built communities within themselves. They had things here. They had to drop bombs on Tulsa because they had a community that was willing to fight them on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that now. These same men that's sitting with me, if something occurred, God forbid, right now, I would risk myself for these men. And like I told you when we had the conversation on the phone, I said, no, brother, I will wear a mask because I'm going to respect you before I respect the facility. We don't have that. A lot of people aren't respecting other black men beyond any other difficulty. They're just looking at it just overtly like, nope, that's just another black man. Good luck to you. I hope you make it because my boat is good. I don't live like that because I know one day I saw him be a hole in my boat. We need to start looking at each other as what we need to do for each other instead of saying, bad whitey, bad whitey, bad whitey. We can't live like that anymore because our ancestors did that already. We have to come critically and come together and say, okay, what are we going to do collectively with each other to sustain ourselves? Because at the end of the day, technology is moving on. Things are going to be changing. 30 years from now, we're probably not even going to be calling ourselves black. It's going to be another term. Just like the brother said, I'm not going to jump on that term because every time I turn around, I'm a Negro, I'm a this, and a that. We need to be able to have something within ourselves. China cut their borders because they felt their country was going out of whack. There's nothing wrong with that when you're looking at it like, hey, we need to save our culture. We're losing our culture because when I see another person, you're not seeing them as your brother. I'm not seeing them like how other people view themselves. The Korean community thinks of themselves together. The Jewish community thinks of themselves together. No, I do not know their plans. No, I do not know what's happening quietly, but I know they sustain each other with each other. The senator is not above the plumber because we're all Jewish. We don't do that within us. The little bit of change or chicken that we get, no mean to get slangy with you guys, but
Chicken
the little
ain't
bit of
slang.
money, some people don't understand chicken. When I talk chicken, they think I'm talking food. I'm talking about paper. I'm talking about money. So when you go to the
I'm
basis,
finna
when we
say.
start making a little bit of money, it's like all I want to do is outshine Ring.
Right.
I don't want nothing else. I just want to make sure I got a bigger house than Kareem because it'll make me feel like a man.
Yeah.
Maybe I want Kareem's life. But instead of talking to your brother and finding out what's going on within you and us coming collectively to what we're doing right now with each other, you'll never have that. And we'll always be with conflict within ourselves.
Yeah.
The basis to what Reem was saying is so correct. We need to start healing. But the problem is with the healing comes a lot of frustration and anger. And we don't know how to deal with that. Because I'm going to tell you now, me and Reem come from the same society, Sean as well, and also Malcolm too. We had a lot of anger as young men. And we had nobody like Marcus did to tell us that that's not the way, young man. Put that down. Hey, what you doing with that? Pull your pants up. Where you going? Where your mama at? Come here, I'm gonna bust you in your head. We don't have that no more. We afraid of our children. They're afraid to see anything beyond. So no wonder why these kids are going through, like what Kareem is saying, the mental traumas, and they're taking these pills and they're looking for escape from reality when there's nobody to guide them. We need more. And we need to do this, and I commend you for what you're doing, and also Sean, because you don't have these discussions.
Right.
We don't talk to each other. It's a hey, I might give you a 5, I might hug the babies, but beyond that, don't come inside of my home because it's my private space. We don't do that anymore. We used to have meetings when we were going through the civil rights era. The problem is we were forced to be with each other. That's the problem. When there was segregation, we had to be around the brother that was the lawyer or the dentist. He had to be next to us because he couldn't go nowhere else. So we built communities within ourselves. The problem is we always had some sense of hierarchy, and we can't do that. I don't care how many degrees a brother have. I don't care how much money a brother have, as long as he's coming with the same goals and the same ideals that's for me and mine. We're not doing that. And we wonder why we're so behind. It's because we're not even in the same relay race with each other. How we gonna move forward if you ain't even passing the baton to me? When he going, he gotta pass it to Reem. When Reem going, he gotta pass it to me. And I'm passing it down to Malcolm, he giving it to him. Malcolm's gone. Martin's gone, they not coming through that door. What we doing now? We gonna keep waiting for them? We gotta do more. That's my whole thing. As a young man going into my 40s, we gotta do more. And I'm not gonna sit here, and I don't wanna ramble, but I'm not gonna sit here and condemn a lot of the young men, like I told these brothers on the phone, because I have no other avenue for them. I'm not gonna tell them to put their firearms down when all they know is violence to get money. Because I don't have no other avenue from. This brother's doing beautiful things in politics and everything that probably help a young man. But Capri Pelzer, I don't have those means. I'm trying to keep my head above water just like the next man. But if I can help you with the last that I have to keep you from hurting another brother, I'm going to do so. If I can give you some food or something that can help you from getting you wanting to rob somebody, I'm going to do so. But we also need to be genuine. If you don't want to interact with those kind of people on the other side, don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to. Do you need to have that firearm with you? Is it licensed? Do you need that in your pocket? Do you need to put yourself around evil, but then complain about the smell of the garbage can? You're in the trash. So I'm not going to be that bearer of bad news like, oh, what this brother talking about? He said, no. I never put myself around a situation where I have to put a firearm on my body. I will protect myself and my family, but I'm not going to go around as if masculinity is built toward a firearm, because it never is.
Right.
In that other culture, their masculinity is built off violence. Their masculinity is built off weapons. Don't live like that. We've been here, and we're going to be here even 400 years from now. We'll still be here. But what will be the story? What will be our narrative? Thank you.
Kareem?
Wow. Oh, yeah. Capri, wow, you should have just dropped that mic, man. I just want to say, and we can go on to the next question. Like you said, I'm a doer, man. I don't like playing games. I don't like talking too much. This is great. This is powerful, and it will have an impact. But if it's about the next steps, it's about the mobilizing. I've been in Vermont, a resident for 4.5 years, and I've never known about him. I met Sean through, and so it should be an active effort to seek out men like this. And I think if we don't get better with that, this is all just going to be hot air and talk, real talk. So, and I'm a visionary. I mean, I move, and I think life is short, and I think that we have to really be able to leave a legacy. In order to leave a legacy, you gotta start some real momentum. And what Mark is doing is great. But I'm 41 years old, so I also hear the same conversations. When I was in New York, part of the NAACP, in the Manhattan branch, it was still some of the same conversations. There's some movement happening, but for young people who still lost and feel alienated,
It's too slow for them.
that's the future. So if we can't get the future involved, then we have no future. It will be the continuous conversation, the same revolving door. Nothing going to happen. It's going to be a whole bunch of hot air. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of just talking. And I'm about action. And I know that it's some stuff, things have to take place first, and I totally get it. And I've been in front of I've been on a few hearings, and I talked a lot about just how words matter, but action matters more. And we're going to continuously see the system just shut us down. That's why we have to build from within. We have to connect. And like I said on the call on Friday, like, what are we doing? What's next? Like, we all know what's going on around here. What are we doing next?
Thank you.
What's the next? What are the action steps? And I know everybody got their game. See, the problem is so many silos
That's right.
of system and of us.
Mhm.
Y'all doing that over there. You guys doing that. I'm doing this. We have to form Voltron.
For
Yeah,
ourselves.
that's it.
We have to form Voltron so everybody can be a moving unit together and be able to tap into that.
I just picked up on that.
Oh, yeah.
I said that before, yeah.
Voltron, for those who don't know, is, look it up, y'all.
Yeah, look up
There was Voltron before the Transformers, all right? If you growing up, when I grew up,
That's
you know,
the-
my
that's
brothers
the-
and I, we used to
Voltron,
play
yeah.
Voltron.
I'm saying, and they weren't. Do you know if you look at one of the shows, the old shows, they were more powerful when they were together.
Absolutely.
That's
When they
right.
That was the whole
That's right.
concept.
Yeah.
They were making moves by themselves.
Yeah.
But when things got serious and got thick,
They had to form.
listen,
Voltron.
y'all, let's form Voltron.
Yep.
They were unbeatable. And I can relate that to us and how we're moving in this state as the minority. That if we don't form the right strategic way, that there's gonna always be room for them to cut us down and to separate us and to have us. I remember I called I called somebody one time, and like I said, I'm a visionary. God put something in my spirit. I'm gonna move on it, and I reach out to people, and I haven't got calls back. I said we should show the movie American Skin. Controversial, the police, they might not like it. So what?
Right.
If we're gonna operate in fear, then we're gonna get what we always got. All right, we see y'all in the back end,
Right.
We'll see you a little later. We hear y'all, Black Lives Matter, but really is what we matter.
Exactly.
And like you said, just to piggyback off what you said, when you look at a hand, right? Because Voltron had 5 lines.
Yep.
Each line was an individual. Each finger is an individual, right? Now you bring all 5 of those hands together, right?
That's
Now
right.
you got a fist.
That's right.
There's nothing physical. We talking about the power that we have when we all form together and come together as one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow.
I think that part of what I've seen and I've only been at this work for like the last 6 or 7 years. I'm a recovering cybersecurity guy. Okay, so that's what I was doing up until then, until 14. I'm also a recovering Republican because that's how I used to get down, But as my observation is running through this stuff, and it's just too much to say. But if I can just consolidate it, distill it down, without being verbose, I would say that that there's political and economic power that we're forced against, and at the micro level, that is one's ability to sustain their life economically, like their job, their livelihood, their income, and that is their social acceptance or their how they move around socially. Okay, it's the same thing. And what it really comes down to is there something you will gain or is there something you will lose? And that is what causes every one of us to make our decisions on how we move through this entire process. Sometimes you call them sellouts or whatever. Sometimes you saying these guys are ride or die, whatever. But at the end of the day, I promise you, what you're seeing is a manifestation of a decision that a brother or a sister is making based upon whether or not there is something that they have that they might lose in those categories or something that somebody else has that they could potentially gain, period. Okay? In addition to that, what we're working with is either real or perceived perceptions about people around us, and much of it is often projections. Look out. What I can tell you is that there is nobody in this state that I either will not, have not, or am not willing to work with or tried to work with. And quite often, at times, those whom I know, and at times, quite often, what I find is because somehow or another I've been projected to be something that I know that I'm not. They've created some kind of perception of who I am, or whatever the nonsense is in the background, because nobody really has time to go figure it out because we got work to do. I almost want to stop there, but all I'm really getting at here is that, you know, there is opportunity for us to work together. You know, there are far too many of us who are afraid that they have something, whether it's social or political, whether it's economic or whatever, that they might lose as a result of it, and that's why they're not stepping up. There are some of us who feel like white people or political, those who hold political and economic power have something to offer them, and if they do this work, they're not going to get it. Right. That's the facts. So I think it was Dr. King who said that when you get to a point in your life when you're not afraid of anything and when you're not afraid to die, then you're free. Yes. So can we be free together is the question. That's a good question. So at this point in the game, you know, I've had a target on my back for 7 years. Bring it. I'm ready to do what I got to do to get this work done. For those who are willing to stand with me, then stand with me. Okay? But don't tell me that I'm not willing to work with you, or that I am this or that, or characterize me as this, that, and the third, because I ain't. What I'm doing is I'm doing the work. I carry the target. If you're ready to carry the target and you want to walk with us, you want to walk with me, or you want to walk together, then I'm always willing to do that. I think half the people, maybe even more of the people who got this talk about how they want to so much do the work and how we need to come together, they haven't let go of those fears, or they haven't let go of those desirous, I guess, those ideas that somehow or another there's something there for them to gain, and that they're afraid that they may not get it. Okay? And honestly, we got black and brown folks doing more damage in this state right now than white people.
I'm sorry, I had to clap, but go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Right. He's right.
And,
He's right.
And I want to say, just building on that and adding to that is, I keep going back to this. We've seen how some of the black and brown women in the state have been targets, you know, for doing this work. You mentioned, you know, having targets on your back for doing this work. We've seen how that manifests, where people have had to move homes because of the threat that they're facing. So I want to make that point, but it also goes back to what you were saying before, Karim, and Capri as well, about the you know, the connections and forming, and actually Sean made that point about Voltron being individual parts, but when it comes together as a mighty fist, right? So being able to come together and making these connections across the state, and making sure we're not working in those silos, right, makes us stronger, more coordinated, and more effective at getting the message across.
Right. You want to get to the audience questions?
Yes, please.
We got 1, 2. Well, we only got 4. So, this for everybody, or whoever wants to answer. First question is, I am hopeful as the men on the panel are speak of seeing progress. I am a teacher in a small rural school, and I have been seeing and trying to deal with an increase in hatred over the past 6 years. Racial issues are swept under the rug, and my district thinks they can solve the problem with a book club. So a so-called restorative justice circle became a platform for our male students to spew more hatred. Teachers have been in contact with NAACP and some fear retaliation. What other resources are out there?
I'll grab that one. Honestly, when you come to that basis, and this person, whoever this is a teacher. When a person is there in that position that she's in, she's going to be the image that these children take to them the rest of their lives. I remember my 3rd grade teacher because I had a difficulty with her. So I'll never forget how she made me feel. So honestly, don't put the power on us. Put the power on yourself. If you feel that racial discrimination is occurring in the environment that's around you, you make the decision, like the brother was saying, to sacrifice yourself or not. That's the problem. You putting us as the person that needs to solve the disease that you created. Why we got to solve racism? Why we got to solve discrimination that people are facing, or people with their hatred and things of that nature? When you want to solve a problem of your, and I don't know if this woman is whatever her race is, but if she's a white woman that's seeing these white children exhibit this kind of behavior, it's not on to the school, it's on to you and your classroom. This is what we're going to do, and this is what we're not going to do. Because when I was a young boy, Big Mama told us what we was going to do, and even in the street, the neighbor told me how I need to. So those structures are what we had in our communities then. We don't have that now. But the community she's building in her rural area, you don't have to wave the Black Lives Matter flag to be on the side of right. I'm not telling you got to have a fist t-shirt tomorrow, but you're the one who needs to instruct these children that that's not the way. If you deem that you're going to wait for your school board or anybody else to make those legislations or issues on the forefront, keep waiting. Just like we waiting. Just like Greene was saying. I don't want to hear all of that noise when it's on us to make solutions for problems somebody else created. The nigger word wasn't created by me.
That's right.
It's on them, and it's on her. Go ahead.
And I'll just that was good, man. I'll just add. So when I was working on the streets in Harlem, dealing with gun violence, the epidemic of gun violence in New York City, parents would say, and legislative, and everybody would say, you know, it ain't my son, it ain't my daughter. Why should I worry about it? I don't. But when it comes to your door, are you prepared to be real or be fake? Now, on that question, you only can tap into who you can tap into, what's in your circle. Everybody has their own talents and gifts. So you don't always have to take on the whole system by yourself. You do, to the teacher listening, you do what you can do. Right. If it's talking to one young person saying, I know what they said and what they're doing hurts, but let me help you build strength within yourself. Understand your value. Because you know what happens after that? It becomes contagious. That's right. The heads start raising, and they have a strength and a strut when they walk. That I can walk in this chaos. So as an individual, you do what you can to help one person, and let them have the strength to help the next person. You don't have to fight the whole system, because you know what? It's going to be hard. And learn to tap into resources like people on this panel. Find out where the help is at. You know, don't fight them by yourself. Thank you. Don't do it. You're gonna get stressed out. You're gonna start losing hair, and all kind of other stuff is gonna start happening. So tap into your own talent and what you can do for that one person that can lead to the second and third person.
Yeah, and we see that playing out actually in the state now. There's a lawsuit. I'm not going to go into detail. That's most likely going to be happening. I think I read something about this recently. I think, is it in Bennington, Sean? In Bennington, where, you know, someone is, it involves issue of unfair treatment of the black kids in the school, right? Where a teacher call it out, and that's going to end up in the court somehow. And like I said, it's not something I can share too much details about. But if you you can go on the Bennington banner, you'll find more about the story there. Right. Sean, go ahead.
Sean, I think the question that you asked is, and also the subject is interesting, and also somewhat distracting, and I think it's just more of the same. I think there's just a lot of earmarks. You know, this is clearly a white woman. This is education. This is this whole idea of book clubs. It's about whether or not an outside organization helping the fear of retaliation. It's just, I mean, I've heard this story probably 40 times or something like that, and I've probably been in the middle of it at least a half a dozen. And and I think that and just to be clear, first and foremost, because our work, and I've been all over Vermont, Hartford, Hardwick, St. Johnsbury, St. Albans, all over the state. So we've been in rural areas as well, and I've got a lot of friends that are doing great work in rural areas across the state. And the vast majority of the real foundational work that we've gotten done across the state was as a result of these white people calling our legislature. Okay, so we got a race class conversation to have too. Now you didn't see that coming, did you? So there's a broader discussion to be had. But one thing that I found out that I know, and I know, because I always ask two questions or I say two things. There's nobody in this room who's white who either has not been racist or does not have a racist in their family. Raise your hand if you're an exception. No hands ever. Number two, there's nobody in this room who's white that has not silently witnessed Black oppression. Never a hand went up. So these are the realities that we work with. The real answer to what we're talking about here is, look, talk to your people. Because at the end of the day, this is not an education thing. This is a community thing. Because last time I checked, people go to school in the places they live. Right? So let's stop having this conversation. Right? Do your job in your community. Right? So if you are white, you have silently witnessed Black oppression. So have all your people. And you talking to me about fear and reprisal? You talking to me about fear and reprisal? Yeah. So do your job. If there's something we can do to help, we will, but we'll help, not lead. And get ready and listen to the things that we are doing and take our cue when we need you. But meanwhile, keep doing your job.
Just to chime in on this before the next question, I've heard it said frequently, if it was up to Black folks to resolve these issues, it would have been done already, hundreds of years ago already, right? So a lot of that is not on us on the one hand, and my mind spins because I think there's so many things I want to address, so it's a little difficult. But if it was on us, this would have been done already. So clearly the onus is on the people in this society who have that power as well. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, they benefit by doing nothing.
Sure.
In a system like this, if white people do nothing,
sure, they
benefit. If white people do nothing in this system, they benefit. So what I mean by do your job is that there must be a willingness to risk something.
And I think it's also a testament to Black folks' civility that we've lived this long under these conditions and have not turned the table over, so to speak. And I know a lot of white folks, and their opinions on a lot of this, if they were in our shoes, they would have lost their lives already, or won fighting to stop what's going on to us in many ways. So in other words, when we're portrayed in the media as these animals, this, that, and like Trump's friends did when the Central Park, I don't know if y'all was in the city at that time, and all of this kind of thing, you put a full page ad, bring back the death penalty for these animals, et cetera. None of them youngsters actually was involved in any of that, but
that was Trump's article.
He put a full page in the Times or something. I mean, he goes way back. That's not even. But so it's a situation where you look at it and it's sort of clear who needs to step up on a lot of these fronts, I think. And I don't want to.
Just to piggyback what you just said about the Central Park Five, they used one word and used that word and basically labeled it on every Black man in New York City at that time. I don't know if you remember, was
Super
wilding.
Widen out. Yeah,
Wilding out.
yeah.
And
Wilding
later
out.
it was with our friend Hillary who called us super predators. if
Super
you recall.
predator. Yep, that was in the 90s as well.
I think
So-
Mr. Biden used that
All
term also,
projecting
just
there.
to throw
Because
that
if
out.
if you really think about it and you do your homework, all of that stuff that they're calling us is because it's what they are. It's what they always
That's right.
have been.
That's absolutely
I'm
right.
not gonna unpack that today. But if you really think about, savages,
That's right.
talk about predators, rapists,
Mm.
Right.
rapists, predators.
Right.
Let's talk about history. Okay, so I mean, if you really think about, if you unpack all of these things that are created to sustain, to reinforce this perception that somehow or another, because you can't. It's just like back in the day, you can't just hold people as slaves without dehumanizing them.
That's right.
You
have
can't.
to
You
do
got to
that.
dehumanize them. You got to, somehow or another, you got to make
Justify
them
it.
less
Right.
than
Less
people.
human.
Right?
3/5.
So it's the same thing. It's just the same. Like my wife says, it's the same soup. It's a different pot.
Mhm.
But that's what it is.
And to piggyback with what you just said, I heard Kamasi. He was in the documentary Made in America. He had said part of the mechanics of oppressing people is to pervert them to the extent to where they become instruments of their own
Oh, that's right.
oppression,
Absolutely.
which is what black on black crime is. And that's-
Self-hatred, etc.
self-hatred.
But that's my, and not to jump off a cuddle, and that's my difficulty. It's like, why when it comes to us, there has to be a name for it?
Right.
Who's killing each other in Vermont?
Right.
Who's killing each other in Barbados? Who's killing each other in China? Who's killing each other in Japan? Those own people. But we don't call it that. We don't say Asian on Asian crime. We don't say this race on this race crime. When it comes to us, it's always viewed and seen as though we are separate from basic society, bro.
Like
And
white
that's
on
what-
white crime, right?
What is
that's
this?
white
It's
on
like
white crime.
it's crime is crime. They're gonna do
That's
evil
right.
things
In their
wherever their
neighborhood.
structure in.
Yeah.
You could read an article, and the worst part about it, and I see, and I'm not gonna go on a crazy tangent, but anytime it comes to us collectively having a mindset toward ourselves, when we turn on the television and we see one of our brothers going through some kind of crime or anything like that, the picture that's displayed of him is at the worst time ever. Of course. When these young men are murdered or anything occurs in their space or anybody does this to them, we highlight the evil that they've either done or a candy bar they've stolen. But when it comes on the other side, and that's what makes it so difficult to have a genuine conversation, is that you'll watch a man murder his whole family, and the photo they show is of him on a ski board with his family laughing.
In addition, what must have happened to him that he got this way versus
His mental must be
Right,
gone.
right.
Something happened to him mentally to make him do this. This isn't logical. He needs more mental health. We
Right,
need more
right,
mental health.
right.
So when it comes to us, we don't need mental health. We just need to be locked up because we're wild, animal, ape-like creatures that are not like them. The difficulty comes when people don't view us like they view themselves. That becomes the whole basis of it. We're not going to keep begging. I'm not going to beg anybody for anything. I don't want somebody to say, hey, we love you, guy, come here. We know you're going through so much, and put your arms over my shoulder as if you're my father. I don't need that.
Right.
All I need is just simple respect and just to give the same opportunity that you're giving. Like whatever you're getting, we just want the same thing. I'm not going to beg anything extra. I don't want anything extra. We just want what's ours.
Right.
And to work for 400 years for nothing,
Right.
you paid the Japanese when you dropped the bomb in Hiroshima. You paid these other people. You paid the Indians when you battled with them in this country here. Gave them land and you gave them these things. We were offered 40 acres and a mule. We received nothing. You let us go as slaves, and on the back end, you put it back inside of your documents that if we commit a crime, we'll go back into indentured servitude, like we'll be a slave again. Right. So how do we look at this? How do you view this? How do we look at it genuinely and say, like, we can have a constructive conversation with anybody that thinks that way? A person that thinks that a 12-year-old child is a man? He said a 12-year-old child is a man. A black young man at 12 is a grown man. But a 12-year-old other child is just a child. So boys will be boys here, and these guys over here should be locked up and the key thrown away.
Narratives.
That's what I'm saying. But the problem is that we start adapting that. And Kareem comes from that culture, and I come from that culture. The gang culture. We start adapting what they view us as. You're saying we scum? We're going to show you scum. You're saying we this? We're going to show you this. And we just live in it. But the problem is they gain from our suffering. My brother being shot up, or this happening to him, or me going through lockup and come out of jail and all these things, somebody else is going to enjoy my pain because I put it into music. Somebody else is going to enjoy my pain because they're seeing my destruction. Oh yeah, he was with this one, now he's a drug addict, and now he's going through this. It's sad watching a lot of these brothers that we seen, and they just die, and they never had an opportunity to live a genuine life because their lives are displayed to everybody in this bad way. That's my whole problem, Sean, is that we can have a genuine conversation, but it has to be no barriers, and it has to be authentic. When our ancestors, when we would sit there and have conversations, it was genuine. We need to get free. And it wasn't just freedom physically. We needed to get free mentally. And we had no space to do it. And now you have families, generation to generation to generation, that carry the same ideal.
That's right.
We don't know basic function. How you not gonna know to talk to another black man when all we was taught was how to have friction with each other? He's from Harlem. I'm from Brooklyn, Staten Island. I'm not supposed to like him. He's not supposed to like me. He's on the opposition.
Right.
I'm on the opposition. But this brother, we laughing on the phone together in our 40s. But in our 20s, I could have killed him. And he could have killed me. That's the dynamic of what Marcus is saying. Like, it's something we need to look at within ourselves. Let's build and let's do within us, and stop looking for others' validation. Sure. Stop looking for others to put us on a pedestal. Stop looking for financial gain, and just understand that we ain't gonna be here forever, and we need to have something here for these babies. That's it.
So well said. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. We got about 10 minutes, I think. Yes, 9 minutes before we end the segment. So let's go to the next question. But and I just want to say real quick again that one of the questions here was wondering why there are no women leaders included in this cohort. Is that planned for later? We will have future segments. Sean is going to be working on future panels. We've had some segments that include specifically just women, and we will continue to have these segments. So Sean has a vision for future panels as well.
Was there previously a panel on? Wasn't there a women panel last week?
Yeah, last weekend. So there was the women's panel was we had a women's panel last weekend.
Right.
So
we had a women's panel last week, and this week we're having a men's panel.
The first one was a men's
first
panel.
one was a men's panel.
Okay.
We had a
Then we
women's
had a
panel.
women's panel.
Okay.
So now we're back to the men.
Oh, so we're just alternating.
Right, we alternate
Yes, and
through.
there are different themes too.
Different
so
combinations.
different things. It depends on the themes of the event. So the next question here, this one actually ties into the last question. Ties into one of the questions that I had.
No, go ahead.
No, we already know what Mark is doing, man. Go ahead,
okay.
Ralph. I knew where he was going. I was like, don't touch it, Mark. I know where you're going. I know where you going. I know where you going. Go ahead, Ralph. Go ahead. I saw his face. I know what he was thinking.
I think let's hear the question, Mark. Let's hear the question. Let me just leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Stop messing with me.
Why are you picking on
Y'all
Bob?
know what's going on because ain't nobody else got the courage to say it.
We already know.
Go
We
ahead.
already know. We already know.
Because what's going on is as what do they say in another vernacular, cancel culture. Right. That's what's happening. Right. They're trying to erase the brothers, right? I mean, I love my wife. She's right there, right? There's a sister right over there. I love all these women that are doing this work across this state and across this country. But there's some power in saying, we want to lift up black women. We want to lift black women up this. We want to lift black women up that, especially in the presence of black men, particularly when black men are also doing the work. So let's just call this thing what, yeah, I said it, but let's just call this thing what it is, and let's be courageous about it, and let's just have a conversation with our women, because there's some other things that are going on, because we also need to gain their trust and their respect, right? Because we got some damage that has been done in our communities with our women, okay? That's what it is. But that don't mean we get to get canceled, okay? What that means is we need to figure out how we lift up men and women in this work, because everybody matters, right? And that thing is a trick, and it's a lie from the pit of hell. Because what it is there are white people that are doing this. They want us at each other, and they don't want to hear from you, brothers. And that's how they shut you down. There, I called it out. All right, I'm done.
You look like you're about to drop a mic.
No. And the only thing is, it's the same thing I was picking back on Mark, because that's what I said. Even though he's older, we have the same spirit. So I knew exactly where he was going when you said that comment. And
y'all wouldn't say it though. Nobody wanted to say it.
But my thing is, I second everything he's saying. It's like you have to look at the structure of what it is. Why do you have to pay somebody to not have a black man in the home? Why would a system say that we will give you money to take care of your babies if he's not there?
And why would you take their children when he's gone?
But that's a whole nother story. That's a whole
What
nother
is that?
topic for you brothers. Yep.
You can build a whole
ahead, Bree.
segment around that. We got about
Yeah,
5
we go.
minutes.
Like I said,
I know this can keep going.
Thank
on.
you. We'll
But
keep
listen,
going.
With this panel, right? It's like you riding a bike. You start slow, and then you start to gain momentum, right? We're gonna get into all these issues.
That's right. That's right.
I was dreaming about it one day sleeping. So I think, you know, my thinking is slowly get into it, right? But, you know, because I'm a man and I'm a black man, I mean, I want to hear voices of black men right at this time, because in Vermont, you don't hear it that much. You just don't.
I wonder why.
And it's also, we're on the front lines in many ways, right? We are the ones that are physically getting canceled by this system out there. So, you know, I don't want to carry it too far, because y'all know I will, but
Yeah. So let's get to the last question. All right, and we have very little time for this question. So let's be brief with the response, so we can wrap up. How does Vermont move forward on racial issues in the state when there's so much pushback? And this feeds into one of the questions that came from our viewers. And in other words, some people want to look at the issues through a social lens, right? That's part of the whole fight right now, and especially in the state, against critical race theory. This concept of critical race theory, this pushback in the state against critical race theory. And the argument I've heard is that race is not about race. And you guys have talked about this to a large extent, cover it a lot. Why you can't just look at the issues from a socio-economic standpoint? This goes back to what you said before, Mark. You mentioned it. There's a difference between the race aspect and the social aspect. There are people out there who will argue that we should be talking about socioeconomics because that's the problem today. It's not race. Race is not the problem. How do you address that?
Well, I'll just start briefly and say that everybody has their worldview. Everybody has how they look at everything through their own lens, whether you're black or whether you're white. And I think the issue is that the worldviews clash. Why some people will say, I don't understand why you guys are still mad. I'm going to say, well, you don't understand why I'm still mad. And until we get to understanding the level there, we're going to always have this tension and back and forth about what's right, what's the right approach, what's not. So again, you know, understanding what's your worldview, because our worldviews could have an understanding. You know, I understand. I have a white friend that we met in a very negative way. And his whole family don't like black people at all. But when we got to the tension we had in the street, he didn't know why he was mad he hated me. It was in West Virginia. He didn't know why he hated me. So I'm gonna leave it at that because we got some short time. But worldview is a real thing, and people, if you can't tap into what your real worldview is,
Right.
you'll never be different. You'll never change.
I
Or be
completely
a part of
understand
change.
what you're saying. I understand it 100%.
I could chime in real quick just to get a couple more words out. And the labeling of things is what bothers me a lot, like this critical race theory we hear a lot about now, similar to the BIPOC, this, that, and the other. You know, I was Negro before, we were a whole bunch of different things. Mulatto, you know, they've called me all kinds of names, but the critical race theory, okay, that's a theory in some regard, right? And there's some validity to a lot of it. I'm not denying that, but that in and of itself is separate from factual history, right? So you hear a lot about, oh, we don't want this taught in the schools, this, and they're trying to merge the two, like, oh, the critical race theory and all of that other black history, y'all trying to say, we don't want that in the schools. There's a distinction as far as I'm concerned. Historical fact is what it is, right? The fact that you said 400 years of this has been going on, the fact that the economic gains in Tulsa were erased by the US government shooting from airplanes at people in the street. The Memphis massacres, plural, I'll put that out there. There's one that historically well known, but I grew up there, so I could talk to you about Lindbergh, Sanders in the 70s, early 80s, et cetera. The reality is that we need to not get caught up in these labels. And another quick point on that is you see this playing out, for example, the news, right? Fox will have their version of what the truths are, if you will.
Version of facts.
Right, and then you'll have this other news channel with their version of facts. And so you got different people following these different channels. And when they're speaking a completely different language, how are they going to come together and have a discussion about that when they see the thing in the room as two different things, right? There has to be a common language that remains with respect to factual, truthful things, right? A universal truth, if you will, right? And from there, people can then have discussions. And like you said, dude didn't even know why he was upset, right? Usually folks are mad at themselves. Like there's a whole nother theory with that, but the reality for me, and I'll leave it at that, is that we need to leave some of these labels alone. We need to definitely, I wanted to speak on that before, this effort of why there are no black women on the stage and this kind of thing. Chill with that. You know, that's my response to that. Chill with that. You know, I mean, where else do you see black men in the state of Vermont? We can't have a panel on the stage without that question or two coming up. I mean, this, you know, I'll leave it at that.
And that'll be a good place to leave it.
I'm trying to stay PG for the TV.
All right, we have just a few seconds to thank our, first, thank you to our panelists. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Sean, for this vision. And keep it going, brother. Keep it going. Yes, applause. And, and we also want to thank our sponsors, the ACLU of Vermont, the Rutland area NAACP. Go to our website, check out NAACP Rutland. You can find the recordings of this event and other events that we've done, and we hope to do more events in the future as well, hopefully in the fall, August, September time frame. And we want to I want to extend a special thanks to Mac Stein and his team. They've been absolutely brilliant. He's the director of technology of tech at the Casella Theater here at Castleton. Castleton, see you, see me. They've been behind this event. So many people came together to do this event. Caitlin and Annie from the NAACP. It truly was a collaborative effort. So we want to thank all these people that have done such a wonderful job, and the students and everybody that's done so well to support us with this. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Raphael.
And just to add on, just to add on, we're not gonna do any panels in the month of July, but we're gonna continue the panels in August and do more. So
Looking forward.
that's all.
Thank you.